Hey guys, we're back to our Atomic Habits summaries, and we've looked at the fundamentals, why tiny changes make a big difference, the surprising power of atomic habits, and the fascinating fact that habits actually shape your identity. This is a very, very important thing in life, and if you think about it, God calls us to sanctification. That's His will for you. And sanctification is very connected to our habits. If we have the wrong habits, we're going to be going in the opposite direction that we should for our sanctification. And if we are able to build the right habits, then we can be going in the right direction for our sanctification. So for me as a Christian, I find this very, very important. And I'm grateful that James Clear has put such a lot of research into this that we can learn from. So how to build better habits in 4 simple steps. Let's face it, guys, change is not easy. Change is the hardest thing on the planet, and we all can testify to that. So when he calls them simple steps, he has simplified them for us. The journey is not easy, but he gives us an enormous amount of advice and facts and tools so that it can be easier. All right. Those 4 steps are: the first law, make it obvious. We've covered that one in another video. The second law, make it attractive. That's the one we're doing today. The third law is make it easy, and the 4th law, make it satisfying. We'll get to those. But today we're on the second law, make it attractive. If you want to change your habit, then make the thing you're trying to change towards, make it attractive. All right. So of course, chapter 8 is how to make a habit irresistible. And science refers to exaggerated cues as supernormal stimuli. And we all know from all the marketing all around us that the primary goal of food science, for example, is to create products that are more attractive to consumers. And all the marketing around us is everything's exaggerated. Exaggerated hips and breasts to sell clothes. Social media delivers more likes and praise in a few minutes than we could ever get at the office or at home. Everything is just more exaggerated to make it more attractive. And this the exaggerated features are naturally attractive to us, and our instincts go wild as a result, driving us into excessive things. And we are running after a dopamine spike, essentially. All right, so we can let this work for us. The habit we want to move towards, just make it attractive, because our natural tendency is to move towards that thing that's attractive. Okay, so because we're running after the dopamine. And what I found fascinating in this chapter is the extent to which we depend on emotions in our decision making. It almost comes across as if that's the entire thing that matters is our emotions, like we totally just follow emotions. Some research has shown, like with rats and things, that without dopamine, desire died. Without desire, action stopped, and rats actually died. So when they were prevented from getting dopamine, they actually wouldn't even eat or drink. They would just die. And so basic habits that keep us alive are even dopamine driven. And I mean, I've read somewhere that we actually produce more dopamine in our stomachs than in our brains. So it makes sense to me that these poor little rats died from not being able to eat or drink just from the lack of dopamine. So the thing about dopamine is, when it comes to habits, the key takeaway is that dopamine is released not only when you experience the pleasure, but when you anticipate it, right? So the anticipation is incredibly powerful. Not even just the fulfillment of it, but actually the anticipation. So it's been shown, like with heroin addicts, they have more dopamine when they anticipate, when they see the powder, when they anticipate, than they actually get from taking the heroin. I found that interesting too. So scientists call this the difference between wanting and liking. So the wanting is the anticipation, and the liking is then the actual getting. So initially, when you have something for the first time, when you experience it for the first time, your dopamine occurs when you experience it at the time of reward. But then the next time when you anticipate it, you have the dopamine at that point already. And if you anticipate it and don't get it, your dopamine will drop. If you anticipate it, you get the dopamine, and if it's delayed, it starts to drop, but when you get it, it'll go up. And so this dopamine thing is very, very interesting. And the brain is apparently has far more neural circuitry for the wanting than for the liking. So a lot more of the brain lights up when there's anticipation than when there's actual getting. And so desire and anticipation is the engine that drives our behavior. Now, for us as Christians, that's just so important it just helps us to see that, because we're always being told in Christian circles to be aware of feeling-oriented living, emotionally driven living, be principled, not emotional. Facts first and then feelings. Feelings will follow facts. Like do what's right, feelings will follow. Do what's right regardless of how you feel, and feelings will follow. So all of this research is showing us how important that is, but also how difficult that is. Okay, it's very, very difficult. And so if we want to move towards a new habit, we need to make it attractive, because then it's easy to go there. And you can do what's called temptation bundling, which works by connecting something that you don't want to do to something that you really do want to do. So, for example, after I get my morning coffee, I'll say one thing I'm grateful for that happened yesterday. Right? After I say this thing I'm grateful for, then I'm going to read the news. So you've sandwiched the new habit you're trying to develop between a current habit. So now that makes it easier because you've connected it to a habit that you already have. And this is the habit stacking that we learned about earlier on in the book. So you connect it to your morning routine. But then as soon as you've done the thing you're trying to turn into a habit, you reward yourself by giving yourself something that you want. Okay? So you connect the habit you need to the habit that you want, because, the habit that you're already happy with, that you really enjoy, like reading the news. And that's called temptation bundling. I like this one, because in our society today, the scrolling is just the thing of the day. So you can tell yourself, all right, after I've taken out my phone, I'm going to do my 10 push-ups or my 10, whatever it is you want to do, 10 burpees or 1 burpee or whatever. And then when you've done that, then I'll let myself scroll. Okay? So you are bundling the temptations. The one that you want to develop and the one that you already have, bundle them, and so you can help yourself move towards, make it more attractive. The burpees are definitely more attractive when you can do something that makes you happy afterwards. Okay, so that summarizes chapter 8. Then in chapter 9, James Clear points out that just where do our habits come from? Primarily, they're coming from our environment. Okay, and this is very interesting. There's a book called How Then Shall We Live by Francis Schaeffer, where he also says values are caught like flu. They're not taught, they're caught. And I think that's what James Clear is saying here as well, is that whatever habits are normal in the culture around us, those are the ones we're going to pick up, and those are the ones that are going to be attractive to us. We were talking in our family the other day about different cultures and the different things that are important to like, for example, the culture that puts great big rings in the earlobes and continues to stretch the earlobes, or stretch out the bottom lips, or taking out your front 2 teeth, or, various different things that are very cultural. And it's fascinating to stop and think, how did that become a thing? That culture values that as beautiful, But it's because this is how we are as people. We are herd animals. We want to fit in. We want to bond. We want approval. So we all kind of fuse with one another and just do the same things and start to value just the thing we see around us. This is a bit scary as well when it says whatever habits are normal in your culture will become the most attractive. The scary thing about this is that as the world becomes more and more godless towards the last days, the habits that appear to be normal, but yet they're so far from the truth, are the very things that are becoming attractive to the younger generations, because that's just the norm, it's all they know. So it also has a very scary element to it. And it's all rooted in the fact that our deepest desire is to belong. And I do feel that one of our deepest fears is rejection. James Clear says here that one of our deepest human desires is to belong. And I think the other side of that coin is that the deepest fear is rejection. And personally, I think that both the desire to belong and the fear of rejection are connected to our spiritual need to be connected to God and to not be rejected for eternity. I believe that we've been created with a need and deep inside need for this connection to God. And we have an innate knowing that if we don't connect with Him, it's not going to be good for eternity. And when I was reading this, it occurred to me that, okay, look, I'm not divorced, so I don't know what that feels like, but I've just heard from a lot of friends that, the constant loss, that constant feeling, that constant missing and longing that doesn't go away. To me, from the outside looking in, it looks to me like it's this unending loss, sense of unending loss and a hurt that just doesn't end. I'm sure people find ways of coping, and many people say that they are happier, but research has also shown that 5 years later, the people who did get divorced compared to the ones who wanted to and didn't, 5 years later, the ones who didn't are actually happier. Anyway, I'm digressing. My point is just this thing of, I'm just trying to say that our fear of rejection is such a deep core thing. And perhaps one of the reasons why divorce hurts so much is because marriage is this picture. It's this picture of what we have with God. And it's meant to be something that doesn't get broken. And so, when that's broken, it leads to enormous hurt. And there'll be an eternity of pain if we break that relationship with God. And I think divorce is just a little microcosm of that, Anyway, let's move on and stick to the book. So, we are impacted by 3 groups in particular. Those are very close to us. But then also the majority. We tend to be influenced by the many. And then we're also influenced by the powerful. So our friends and family, that's obvious how that works. We just want to stay part of the tribe. And then we are impacted by the many. So interesting research was done where a room full of people were shown these 2 images on a screen, and they were asked to declare which line is the same length as the card on the left. And when only one other person was contradicting and saying B instead of C, then it was easy to say, no, I think it's C. And when 2 people agreed it's B, it was harder to stick to the answer of saying no, it is C. The answer is C. But as soon as it went over 2 people who disagreed, then it was not possible anymore to stick to what you knew was right. Then people would give the wrong answer knowing that that's not the right answer. And they couldn't do otherwise. So we really are very much like sheep. And it's fascinating, this desire to conform and the need to be accepted and the need to fit in. And then, of course, the need to be praised. So we like to imitate the powerful. We're drawn to behaviors that gain us respect and approval and admiration and status. And so that's just how we function. But what we need to do is, what if we've picked up habits that aren't good for us along the way, and we want to change them? We want to find and fix those bad habits, obviously, because they're taking us in the wrong direction, and they're not. We don't want the outcome that they're heading towards. And if I can I did say at the beginning of these book summaries that we want to try and have a biblical perspective. If our habits are not lining up with what God's calling us to, then we definitely want to find a way to solve that, right? We definitely want all the help we can get to make headway in the right direction. And so this chapter talks about how we can do that. Okay, our cravings essentially have a motive attached to them, and it's actually, the underlying motive is actually about how we want to feel. All right, so a craving is the sense that something is missing. It's the desire to change your internal state. And why this is so interesting to me is because I've listened to Esther Perel on relationships and things, and she's very clear from her research. She's discovered that people are unfaithful to their spouses not because they don't like the spouse, not because the spouse isn't meeting their needs or the spouse isn't enough or anything, but actually because they have a feeling that they need to change inside themselves. I call it a hole in the heart. What they really want is to feel different. So, and we all have this problem to some extent. When you binge, eat, or light up a cigarette or browse social media, what you really want is not the food or the cigarette or the likes. What you're really trying to get is you want to feel different. And this brings me to something that I was learning today and yesterday from the Bible, where it says we need to be still. God told Cain, "Why is your face downcast? Surely if you do what is right, you will be accepted." And God told him, "Sin is crouching at your door, it desires to have you, and you must master it." The original Septuagint says, "Be still, and you will have dominion over him and control, okay, over that sin nature." But the instruction is to be still. And that be still is about a mental state. So when you want to feel different, I think that what you're really craving is that feeling and state of being that comes from being still. And, I'm thankful to the Lord that this chapter is coinciding with what I learned today and yesterday. And it was frustrating me a lot that so many months went by and I wasn't keeping up with these summaries, and life just got so busy. But after today, I thought, wow, I actually think the timing is perfect. Because this thing of wanting to feel different, it is solved through a relationship with Christ. And not just that, but nurturing that relationship in the right way where you can go and be still. Devotions are not just about clicking and listening every day, which I've got to click and listen through the Bible every day. It's great if you can do that, but that's not going to solve your spiritual walk. what you need is to be still. You need to go into that deepest state of dwelling on who is God. Where is all of this going? Get perspective. Take time. Am I trusting God? Am I really walking with Him, or am I frazzled and frantic and running? And because that's what drives us to find things to make us feel different. So I think the solution to feeling different is in Christ. And the emotions are driving us, and that's what comes under control when you can be still. So it says here, sometimes all you need is a slight mind shift. Well, I would go beyond slight, and I would say be still, and that's a big concept. That is a very big concept. Okay, so the mindset shift that James Clear is talking about here is about rewriting the narrative. And I've read many Christian counselors that say this is how you overcome trauma. Rewrite the narrative, essentially. I mean, it's not so cold, cut, and clear as that. It's a process and a journey, but essentially what you're moving towards is rewriting the narrative. So, for example, the guy in the wheelchair, when he was asked, don't you hate being in your wheelchair? He was like, no, this thing sets me free. If it wasn't for this wheelchair, I'd be stuck in my house. So he's reframed being in that wheelchair. And that's what's available to us. And personally, I think that we can take our burdens to the Lord, and He can help us to rewrite the narrative. We can take our trauma to Him. In fact, when we do that, when we pray, when we talk to the Lord about stuff, then He can put a new way of thinking about it into our hearts and minds. Even forgiveness brings a new narrative, a new perspective to the pain. There are many things that can happen in your heart when you're talking to the Lord and trying to walk in His way that can help you rewrite the narrative. And that's why in Him we overcome. He gives us the mindset shift that we need. And James Clear says that these little mindset shifts, they're not magic, but they can help change the feelings that you associate with the habit. And that's what you want to do. You want to, the bad habit must stop being attractive. And the good habit, the change, it must become attractive. So when you can change your feelings, you're going to more easily go towards the right thing and more easily leave behind the wrong thing. Yeah, so that essentially is the second law. From Atomic Habits, James Clear. Hope you guys enjoyed that.